Welcome to Conversations Beyond Borders. I'm Susan.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
How you doing, Susan?
I'm doing okay. It's been a bit of a rough week, but I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Oh, I'm happy to be here too. It's nice to get a break from the insanity and just have a nice little chat.
Yeah, it is. It's about a conversation, and this week's episode is really important. It's honestly, I think, one of the most crucial things that women should be having conversations about, and that's about our own voice, and how that changes and evolves throughout our lives. And you and I have discussed that I think the best way to manage a topic like this is to start at the beginning. Start at the beginning where our voice is probably the most affected, and that is in childhood, where we are learning from everyone around us what to think, what to feel, how to behave, what not to do, how to be the good person, how to be the person that everyone else thinks that we should be. So this conversation isn't going to be about how do you find your voice. The goal really is just to be curious about its evolution.
Okay.
Because as we know, I think that we would all say that the inner voice isn't always confident or
Correct.
profound, but it's honest.
Yes.
And if we in our midlife can begin to tap into what each of our inner voices are saying, maybe we'll find things there that we didn't know were there. And I think that's what this podcast is all about. So let's start, as I say, with our childhood. Before we know who we are, we learn from the voices around us.
Right.
Now, Laura, when you think back to your childhood, whose voice do you remember hearing the most?
Well, it's funny you ask that. I mean, I remember, and as we were talking about this, and we were talking about this topic for this week, I don't know if it's because I'm so old. I'm so far removed.
You're old.
from that space. But I would absolutely have to say it was my mother's voice. But again, I'm so far away from that, it's really hard for me to remember. Right. So I had to go back and think about times when I know I either said or acted in a way that would be a mirror or something that she had done, and something that, I was used to hearing, whether it was a catchphrase or a way I handled the situation. And that was really hard for me to go back and remember that time.
Right.
But
do you remember maybe how she made you feel?
Not so much that as it was like the only example I can think of honestly is newly married, and we, brand new house or first house. And we were in the middle, my husband was in the middle of doing a home improvement project, and he was really frustrated with something. And I took kind of almost like a childlike voice. And I'm like, oh, you silly, it's not that big of a deal. And he got really mad at me because he felt it was very condescending. Right. And I was like, oh, but that would have been something that I would have heard from my mom. Yeah. Just to try and smooth over. And it's like, don't feel bad. It's okay. But it just didn't land well with him. Yeah.
Right. I think when I think back to my childhood, being Canadian, I think there were a lot of values that were instilled in our family culture, that being of kindness and selflessness. But I think my therapist has identified the fact that maybe way back then, I also learned by trying to be selfless and to serve others that it began a period for me and a reference for me going forward that somehow what others needed, what I needed to do for them
Mhm.
became more important than
Mhm.
what I needed to
Mhm.
do for myself.
Mhm. Agree, agree. And I also think though too that that kind of goes back a little bit to the last episode that that's women in general. You
Right.
know, that that's what our culture doesn't sound like, well, the border makes any difference, right? On either side of the border, the
Right.
culture was that as a female, these are the things you do and you're in service, right? You're in service to whether it's your husband, your children, your boss, whoever.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, being the youngest of three daughters, I felt a lot of pressure. And again, you sort of wonder when that inner voice begins to tell you that maybe you're not good enough or that
Mm-hmm.
you're not measuring up, that somehow my two older sisters, they knew who they were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they knew where they wanted to go with their careers. They were very focused on that journey. And quite frankly, I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
I didn't know where I wanted to go. And there was a lot of pressure at the time. Well, just, go to college. That's where you figure it out. And I remember being absolutely terrified, wondering sort of what I got myself into because I didn't have this passion
Yeah.
for what like other people had. Their paths seemed clearer and I
Mm-hmm.
felt less than. There I started very early. There must be something wrong with me.
Right, right, right. Well, I will say, when you're talking about your inner voice, I will say that I did learn an inner negative voice, and it was, because my mom's a verbal processor. And so if she would make a mistake, she would call herself stupid.
Ah,
And I don't think, I mean, obviously knowing what I know now, it was a very just like benign remark. But when you hear it, it slowly kind of feeds in.
it does. I
It,
agree.
yeah, and it wasn't until, and I didn't even realize it. And I don't ever recall like internalizing it or feeling bad about it. It was just kind of one of those things.
Yeah.
But then I started my gratitude practice and doing the gratitude journaling. And I've told this story a million times. I will never forget. It was about 90 days into the gratitude practice. I My children would laugh. I burned the garlic bread, and once
Yeah.
again, and I went to pull it out of the oven and I put it on the counter and I didn't say anything, no negative. Oh my God, you're so stupid. How could you do that?
Yeah.
And I kind of started to go along the rest, preparing the rest of the meal. And I had to take a pause. I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute. I didn't just beat myself up for that. What is going on? So it's interesting. You talk about that negative voice and where it
Yeah.
kind of stems from, right? And it sounds like for you there was a lot of comparison with your sisters, but
Absolutely.
honest to God, I mean, I think you were probably the majority of people because at 18, how many people know what they're going to do with the rest of their life?
Right.
It's
Right.
unreasonable.
But and I think that competition is also fed in school. We want to be the straight A student. We want to be the one that is getting, the scholarships. We
Oh, for
want to
sure.
be the one that has the path. But I think you're right. I think there's a huge majority of us that attach not knowing and not being bright enough.
Oh, for
You know,
sure.
you're attaching it to that word stupid and yeah, I think that is used very carelessly, to be honest, in our
What,
society.
stupid?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a word I don't like.
No, agree, agree, agree. I will
It's
agree.
really not a word that I like. So what I think we should encourage our listeners to do is maybe stop here and say, what childhood messages still shapes you today? Be aware, be curious about the kinds of things that even funny family sayings I find as I get older, my kids laugh. They and where'd you go, Laura?
I have to plug in my computer because the battery's low and we're going to run out of power.
Welcome, listeners, to Real Podcast Reality. That's awesome. I'm so
Whoopsie.
concerned. I'm talking to a wall.
I know.
That
I
feels
was
familiar.
listening. I was listening. You could have kept going. Nobody
Well,
would
I
have been
was
the wiser.
Well, my kids will laugh, even, I think that you would agree that there are times throughout your life where you're right. You may not be conscious of the kinds of things that were said in your household, but they have a
Right.
way of repeating themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And I always said to my kids, when they were young, maybe high school age, about parties and stuff. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what they say. And they're like shaking their heads already. And I'm like, you can't dance all night if you can't pay the fiddler in the morning.
There you go.
I said that constantly, and I am sure that's what came out of my mother's mouth.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
They have a way
I'd
of
never
repeating.
heard that phrase before. Yeah.
No,
No.
maybe it's Canadian.
It's a Canadian thing.
Maybe it's a Canadian thing.
If you
But
can't pay the fiddler in the morning.
well, eventually we left home, you and I.
Yes.
We moved from that experience of parental guidance and teacher advice, and moved into a world that they now call adulting. And Lily, my youngest, tells me, Mom, the whole adulting thing, that's a farce. Because I always said, the next chapter, you just wait till you get there. It'll be so great and it'll be
Yeah.
so enjoyable. But with adulting, that voice of a young adult,
Mm-hmm.
I think is mixed with a lot of self-doubt
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of fear and a lot of panic. And certainly today, I think young people have a right to be concerned about, how do I afford the house?
Oh, exactly.
How do I even pay for school loans? How
Yeah.
do I think that's a realistic worry. And for us, we didn't have to worry about the school environments as our kids, often did, because
Mm-hmm.
they were a lot safer, but it was still that message coming from my childhood that was like, make sure you pick a safe partner,
Right.
make sure you pick the man that's most like your father,
Yeah.
because that's who you're going to trust, right?
Right.
And that fairy tale story, as you and I talked about, continues to be told.
Yeah.
And the sort of the dream versus the reality sometimes is a hard one.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And it's so funny because you talk about the messaging, make sure you pick somebody like your dad. With
Yeah.
me coming from a divorced household, I never got that. Right? I
Right.
never got that message in that regard. Yeah.
Do you find that, do you think maybe that you, coming from a divorced home, that was there even a greater worry about not wanting to repeat that, or making sure I did pick the perfect person, so that you could be assured of not living that yourself?
For sure. For sure. So there's a couple things I was very, very, very mindfully looking for. So
Right.
I'm divorced, married a second time. So in my first marriage, when I met my first husband, when I grew up, and my dad and my brother left, changed states, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I missed having that family unit. And so when I married my first husband, he had this massive family unit. I mean, massive. I mean, it was his dad had, 6 brothers who had
Oh,
6
wow.
wives, who each had at least 2 kids, and
Yeah.
everybody, for the most part, lived close. So family gatherings were 60 people easy. And it
Wow.
just was this great fun energy that I was really craving. But the other thing I was looking for is I was looking for, what level of stability does he have?
Sure.
His parents are still together. The family unit's super strong. All of these things that I looked for because, looking for or considering someone as a life partner, knowing that we would have children together, these are all things I wanted for my
Sure.
future children. And
Yeah.
so having the big family unit and being able to have those gatherings and that security of all these people, that surround you and love you and will be there for you, to celebrate, all the graduations and the
Yeah.
weddings and the
All the
birthdays.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we'll also be there for you to, help pick you up when things aren't so great. Yeah.
Do you think that newly married voice um was confident about your role in helping shape that family?
Absolutely not. So when I got married, I was 20. I was
Oh boy.
20 years old when I got married. And
Mhm.
so, no, I did not have enough world experience to
Right.
have my own voice. I didn't have enough world experience or education or knowledge to really be, like you said, confident enough
Yeah.
in certain things. Now, I would say I was one, and maybe that was just based out of because of that, but I've been one that has learned how to rely on my gut. And sometimes I don't have a fact, I don't have an example, but there's something in my gut that is screaming, this is not okay.
Mhm.
Which sometimes was a challenge to convince other people that, this is not okay. Well, why? I don't know. It's just not okay. It's just not. There's
Right.
something that's
Right.
telling me it's not.
Well, I
But
think
no,
that's the key, right? Is is
right.
is I think we do have that inner voice regardless of how complicated our adult lives can get at times, but it's the intentional listening. It's
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
being aware that an, that inner voice can truly help guide us, keep us
Absolutely.
safe,
Yeah.
and help us take those next steps.
No, agree. Agree.
So
And
you
it's
weren't
important to
necessarily,
have the language around it too. It's important to
yeah,
have the language to explain the inner voice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's something that probably I didn't do enough of.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't give it enough weight. Um, I probably worried a little too much about what other people thought, what
Oh,
other people were
100%.
doing.
100%. Well, wouldn't you say
Was I,
also trying to get into with a new family? I mean, you're so worried about what they're going to think, and
yeah,
are they going to like you, and if they don't like you, they're going to carry a lot of weight with your husband, right? Or your
yeah,
future
yeah,
husband.
yeah.
And
Combining two families is, I think, one of the hardest things ever, and I think
mhm.
maybe that's when our voice gets quiet, depending on your environment. I'm sure
Right.
our listeners have a variety of environments that they would love to share. But just between you and I, we did live very different lives, but somehow this funnel of expectation
Mhm.
gets us all moving in trying, this is what we should be doing.
Right. Agree.
It's not necessarily the right life. It's simply the best life you knew how in the moment.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, that's a great call out. I mean, it doesn't matter if, you came from Canada, you came from the US, married, ended up divorced. It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
the same. It's all the
It
same
is.
struggle.
Yeah. Right.
Agree. Agree.
So, we could probably go on forever about that newly married. I've been married almost 40 years. I could probably go on about 40
Congratulations.
hours about yeah, sometimes particularly when we moved to the United States and I was very much alone. I had a career before I left, and it was talk about listening to an inner voice at that moment saying, I I have to keep my children safe. I have to keep my
Hmm.
7, my 5, and my newborn safe, and to sacrifice a piece of me that had been really important my whole
Yeah.
life. So now I'm thrown into this maternal role that I really didn't see coming, and that voice that was hard.
Hmm.
I remember being sad.
Hmm.
I remember being lost. I remember being overwhelmed. My
Yeah.
husband traveled extensively. I missed my family. I
Of
didn't have
course.
the contacts. I didn't have friends. And I was very much alone. It was a really kind of scary time for me
Of course.
during that time. So I think you and I could talk a very long time about that period. But I think what might interest our listeners even more is that empty nester voice, that
Hmm.
actual midlife, when perhaps the maternal role it is quieter and our responsibilities in the household have been diminished. What is your inner voice said during that period, do you think, the most?
So that's interesting. So, you talk about the maternal period and thinking about how, I went from, married life and kept it
Mhm.
quiet, keep the peace. But at the same time, if the kids needed anything,
Oh gosh.
totally push myself out and my voice out and learning to speak up in that arena, right? Maybe
Right.
not necessarily in the marriage space or the couple space, but definitely, with the kids, I had to go through almost like I was forced into a rebuilding process. Um, but because I did end up, my marriage ended. Um, it's interesting because the empty nest thing and the marriage thing kind of all happened for me at the same time.
Right.
So the kids are, either in college or graduating from college, close to graduating. I'm starting a new job, a new life, and I'm also setting new boundaries for myself or new expectations for myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, what do
and
you
be
want?
exactly. And when I finally did get back into like the dating world and looked at what that was going to look like, I made a promise to myself, and it was scary. It was scary. I made a promise to myself, I will never hold back. I will be respectful. I will make sure that it's not in the heat of the moment. I will try to speak clearly and
Mhm.
unemotionally,
Mhm.
but I will never hold back what my true desires, thoughts, feelings, and emotions are ever again. And
Right.
if
There is
someone,
something to be said about that chapter where maybe some of the insecurities, or is it just like I'm done. I'm done caring about what other people think.
yeah,
I'm tired of maybe sitting in the corner and not speaking my mind because you don't want to rock the boat, or you don't want to
right.
create another family crisis. Uh, I hear you. I absolutely hear you.
So with now, so with like I said, myself, with all of that was going on, I'm assuming, just based on my own perspective, that it's a little bit easier for me, even though it's very scary, but also holding true to the ideal that whoever comes into my life, if they're going to partner up with me, they're going to have to be okay with all of me.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? As your kids are leaving and you're going through this empty nest phase, but you're in the same relationship with an established set of ground rules, if you will, and expectations.
That's a great question, Laura. It's one that I've actually thought a lot about, because I think as mothers, you said it earlier, we are so willing and capable of responding to every whim, of our child. And I think when the empty nest happens, there's this strange phenomenon of going, do I really know my husband? Do I uh, is our connection strong? Is our connection the same? There's a little trepidation of who are we now together? Um, yeah, it's something that I talk about with my therapist because I want this chapter. There's a lot of times when you talk to your friends and you hear about that, one's going this way and one's going that way, and it really, I think, comes down to some really good communication about hopes and dreams, again, about what you want at this stage of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But there can even be, discussions that, oh, I really thought that you, or I thought that you, and it's work.
Yeah.
It's like anything in a marriage. It's still work, important
Yeah.
work. So yeah, that's a really good question.
Interesting. No, that's interesting. Because again, I would never consider that perspective because, and in that journey, because that wasn't mine, right? It was, I almost
Yeah.
feel like it's a
Yeah.
little bit easier for me in that regard of, I don't have to deal with that dynamic of, essentially, okay, I've been biting my tongue for all these years. Now I'm going
Yeah.
to, start speaking
Yeah.
up. Sorry, you're going to have to get
Yeah.
used to it.
You're still in the fairy tale
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's going on. I guess in order to sort of wrap up this episode about voices and where they all come from, what kinds of things is your voice saying is important, like in this phase of your life? We all talk about slowing down and trusting yourself, and really, I think, we talked about the whole yes, I'm fine in the last episode about should we be able to say no a little easier? Can we be honest and transparent with our friends? What kinds of things is your voice saying in this stage?
Well, I would say, and it's funny because your social media, picks up your preferences and you get the algorithm and you get all the things right. And I'm seeing a lot
Yeah.
of content for women our age that are like, I'm in my I don't care era, and
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
it's true. It's true, and it's not that I don't care. It's that I'm now starting to focus more on what I want this chapter of my life to look like.
Right.
And there's there's definitely that, but there's also finally making space for my own healing. Yep. Healing from, childhood traumas, healing from traumas in my first marriage, and just really getting in and focusing on being the best me. Now, I will say, you talk about slowing down, and we keep talking about this, and when the times are quiet, and I'm really starting to feel convicted that I have created a life for myself that I don't allow that space.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
absolutely
We've talked about that before.
do not allow that space. And
Yeah. You don't take the time, the intentional time to be still,
right.
and to be quiet without being, having that stimulation in your life.
Exactly.
What do you think that is based in? Where's that voice from?
Oh, that's coming from the fact that there's probably things I don't want to deal with yet. That to me, that was easy. That's easy. That's easy. I know
Wow.
that. But what those things are, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Well, I think this is a time, you're right, to give yourself the space and the permission
Yeah.
to finally put ourselves on the top of that
Mm-hmm.
list and realize that we've you're supposed to be wise at this
Right.
age. And that wisdom, I think, comes from, as you said, some
Mm-hmm.
pain and some disappointment and regret. Um, but it's that living more
Mm-hmm.
intentionally. And I listened to a podcast a friend told me about the other day. And it talked about the things that we say to ourselves when we first get up in the
Mm.
morning, because that's when our cortex in the front of our brain is most susceptible to shaping our day. And I loved one aspect, and it said something about choosing a word of the day. And I went, does that really work? But I think it is that intentional living when we say that today's going to be about being
Yeah.
courageous. Maybe it's the boss that you intended, to speak a little more clearly. Maybe it's a doctor
Right.
that um, you know, you need some accountability from. And so today was courageous, and I don't know if I fulfilled it, but it was a voice that I heard all day
Mm-hmm.
long. It was something that was in the back of my mind that said, I want this to be the focus of
Mm-hmm.
today. And I don't want 10 other things. I don't want all of that.
Noise.
Yeah, messing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need a clearer
Mm-hmm.
voice for
Mm-hmm.
sure in midlife, one that is a lot more intentional.
I like that. I like that. I like that word of the day. I'm actually going to get my sticky notepad and my Sharpie marker out. And actually, you know what? You can use dry erase markers on your bathroom mirrors. You don't even need to use a
Oh,
notepad.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it will wipe right
And it
off.
was also, yeah, I think I'm going to make like a something in Canva that allows me to put the word of the day every day on the wallpaper of my
Ooh, I
phone.
like that. I like that a lot. I like that a
It's
lot.
just, again, having intentionality about what we want to think about all day and making sure that voice is very clear about what you finally want. It's not that our voices are new, it's just maybe it's simply easier to
Yeah.
hear in midlife. So what we kind of want to leave you with is this curiosity that we spoke of at the beginning. Our voice has grown with
Mm-hmm.
us. It's learned. It's adapted. Um, it loved. It carried. And now life is just quiet enough to hear it again. Not louder, just more
Mm-hmm.
clearer.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully, just our insights and what we've experienced, throughout our lives,
Right.
will cause you to think about, have our listeners think about their voice and how it was shaped and developed, and wondering, yeah, what they want. What is your voice? What do you want it to
In this
say
stage of life. Yeah. Yeah. But
in
what
this
do you
stage
what
of
do you yeah,
life?
what does your voice need to be to live your best life at this stage?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because we all deserve that.
Well, let's leave it
Yeah.
there. Yeah, let's leave it
Okay.
there. Um, Thanks for joining us.
Yes, yes. And if you
Um,
want to comment or you want to join the group, you can join us on Facebook at Conversations Beyond Borders with You. Just it's a private Facebook group. You can go in and fill
yep.
out the information and we'll send you an email link to be able to join the group.
Right. And of course, we're on all the social media platforms under Conversations Beyond Borders. And we would love to hear from you. We try to continue this discussion and this sort of thoughtful conversation, um, you know, following the week of the podcast so that we can, yeah, begin to have a deeper conversation about the subject.
That's
So
right.
we look forward to you next
Yes,
week.
we will see you then. Thanks.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.